this is probably the most rage bait Sonic channel ever. I'm proud of you. I really hope this isn't just a rage bait. I find these takes very interesting. Bro's the embodiment of hot take. Okay, fine. Whatever. Hot take this, hot take that. I can agree that maybe my videos get more views because they're unpopular opinions, but what I will not agree on is that my videos are rage bait. They're not. The effects of rage bait might apply, but I'm not trying to make rage bait content. And this video is proof. How's about this for a hot take? Yeah, this is ice cold. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is my favorite 2D Sonic game. Yeah, I know, so unoriginal. Everybody loves this game, and for good reason too. Just by booting it up, the game looks so good and the feel the game gives you is amazing. From the upbeat music to the beautiful visuals, this game really is the better sequel. Yeah, I said it. Now put your pitchforks down, you all know it's true. Yep, drop them all on the floor. Yeah, that's what I thought. After the events of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, the Death Egg lands on Angel Island. This causes the island to fall down from the sky and crash into the ocean. Apparently, according to Origins, Eggman landed in the Hidden Palace Zone, which kinda makes sense considering Eggman knowing about the Master Emerald, presumably having the Death Egg landing in Lava Reef, and meeting up with Knuckles, but at the end of Sonic 2's good ending, you know, the canon one, we can very clearly see Eggman stomping his feet next to the Death Egg robot in a bush. Hey, storytellers, you kinda missed that. Basically, Eggman convinces Knuckles that Sonic and Tails are coming for the Master Emerald and basically that they're bad guys. Knuckles, who has had no interaction, and Eggman using the point that Sonic had the Chaos Emerald as proof, Knuckles trusts him. So immediately after Sonic 2, or maybe not immediately after Sonic 2 because they really got the goofy rocket thing back on, they send some type of energy from Angel Island, so they check it out. Sonic decides to actually be smart about landing on an unknown island by turning super, but it turns out that in-game mechanics do match up with the narrative. As such, Sonic and Tails head into Angel Island, trying to get the Chaos Emeralds back from him. And honestly, the way they introduce Knuckles in this game speaks volumes about his character. My guy literally just shows up from under the ground, takes a god out of his divinity, takes all his gems, and just emotes on the dude and leaves. Knuckles knows the island better than anyone, and he's pretty confident and cocky to pull a stunt like that. Too bad the fabled cross-bearer of Sonic the Hedgehog became the mayor of Stupidville, or whatever they called it 21 years later.
Approved!
That's all we got in the story for now, but we will get back to it later. Angel Island Zone is, in my opinion, perfect opening to the perfect 2D Sonic game. It has everything from beautiful scenery and visuals, amazing level design, midway changes, and so much more that really makes you want to play more of this game. It just seems to do everything so properly and so effectively that it makes people want to give this game an actual chance. So, let's talk about it. Like we all know, there is no perfect thing in life. Angel Island is a great opening, but with all my other great zones I reviewed, I do have my pet peeves with the zone. Firstly, crazily enough, we're going to talk about the boss fight. The boss fight itself isn't a problem, in fact I think it's great. The real issue I have with this thing is the way the boss itself is set up. There are bottomless pits on each side of the arena, which in itself isn't very big of a problem. Where it does become a problem is when something like this happens. Bruh. I had already beaten the boss and was simply trying to get Tails to grab onto me, but instead I used my fire shield and died, starting myself all the way back from the airship section, and this can be extremely annoying really quickly. And this leads me to another huge problem I have with Angel Island. The cutscenes they have are pretty cool, but the problem with them is like some other cutscenes, like Sonic Frontiers, they are way too long. You probably don't understand what exactly I mean, or how bad it is, so let me show you. First off, when you start playing Angel Island, the opening cutscene takes a whole 23 seconds to finish. Sure, the first time you're playing the game it isn't anything terrible, but for someone like me who has played this zone more times than everyone else I've ever known combined, this cutscene is a drag. Thank God Kekavision has the backspace feature which speeds up your gameplay, and also Sonic 3 aired for just being able to skip the cutscene altogether. And then, once you get up the huge tree, another 13 seconds are taken for the first Fire Breath cutscene, being almost 34 seconds. And then, for Act 2, the airstrike takes a whole nother 32 seconds! That's a whole minute of doing absolutely nothing! And once you add the fact that dying the way I did after the boss fight, that's another 32 seconds of holding right and doing nothing. So yes, while Angel Island is a great opening to the pinnacle of 2D Sonic, it's definitely not perfect. That being said, here's everything I absolutely love about this zone. Now that the bad stuff is out of the way, I can gush about how much I love this level. Firstly, the visuals are amazing. Sonic 3 obviously stepped up the visual appeal of the classic Sonic games by a lot, from saturation, elements, backgrounds, details, and more, but wow! Angel Island is a beautiful setting. Lush jungle trees with a glistening sea in the background. Sonic 3's aesthetic is amazing, and this level is a prime example. Next, we have the immaculate level design. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Sonic the Hedgehog 3 is the best of all the other classic Sonic games put together. Sonic 1's strength isn't exactly speedy sections, it's more platforming. Sonic CD's is exploration, and Sonic 2 is for its speed. Sonic 3 somehow manages not only to have its own well-made level design, for the most part, but it also manages to take all the good parts from the past games and make itself a masterpiece. And Angel Island has cemented itself to be one of the best classic Sonic zones in terms of level design. The different routes are amazing, and blasting through isn't a problem either. Like, for example, did you know that on the top route of the beginning of Act 1, there's a secret area with a ring box only accessible to Tails or Sonic and Tails? And in Act 2, there's a whole different section for the draining water section that you can take using a bubble shield or Tails. There's a whole bunch of rings, flame shields, and even a lightning one too. And if you decide not to go to the upper path, the lower path is split into two paths, one going underwater. Honestly, this is how level design should be made. And the thing is, just because the exploration and replayability value of Angel Island is immensely high, doesn't mean that the speed factor has been let down either. Zooming through these levels is a very plausible method to play Sonic 3. Sometimes you just want to take your time and see what the level has to offer, and sometimes you just want to grab a speed shoes monitor and blast through the levels at blitzing speeds. It's the perfect balance between the regurgitating Sonic CD fans and the screaming Sonic 2 fans. Furthermore, I want to talk about the bosses. The mini-boss isn't anything Oh, wait, it's already done? Yeah, this game doesn't have the best introduction to mini-bosses. Putting a flame shield monitor right before you fight a boss whose main attack is fire isn't very different from putting an invincibility monitor right before a boss fight Green Hill style. And even without the flame shield, nudging yourself into the back of the fire breath to kill it effortlessly isn't exactly hard to do. But the main boss is perfect. The difficulty of the boss is perfect, and the way he shows up from behind the trees at first really does add to the tension. Again, putting a fire shield right before the boss that the only attacks with fire isn't exactly a smart decision, but at least this time it's possible to lose in the airstriking cutscene. And beating the boss with the fire shield isn't exactly a good idea, as we've seen. And lastly, something that I wasn't exactly sure on placing, it's the music of the level. In Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles, there's different music for each act, but they don't differ that much. But in some cases they completely do. For example, Hydrocity Act 1 is leagues behind Act 2 when it comes to music. Also, it does in gameplay as well, but that's not for right now. Angel Island's music isn't bad or average, and it does fit the theme of the level, but it's not anything special. You won't find this level's song in my music playlist, unlike Hydrocity Act 2, Ice Cap Act 1, Flying Battery, and Lava Reef. But it's not like some other zones we'll speak of, so I'm not complaining. In conclusion, while the annoying boss fight setup and the long cutscenes can sour the zone, the wonderful level design and fair enemy placement with the beautiful visuals and the nicely done boss fight really make Sonic 3's opening level an amazing experience. Hydrocity Zone is a zone that is so well done, it's surprising. Seriously, I thought people didn't like water levels, but when it comes to this zone, people love it so much. And for good reason. The zone does so much right that it really does nail the ideal of the water zone level design. So, let's talk about how Sonic 3's second zone is so good and what it could improve on. Like I've said, nothing in life is perfect. No matter how good you think something is, there will always be an objectively bad problem with that thing. You'll hear me gush on and on about how good Sonic Frontiers is, and how it's a masterpiece, but in reality, the long unskippable cutscenes, the log tracking points like the squid chase on Chaos Island, and the memory tokens collecting on Aranos aren't all things I hate about the game, and so is with Hydrocity. It's not perfect. For example, look, I'm sorry, okay? I looked and I scanned and I tried to criticize this level. I played it over and over, trying to get sick of it. I even got the special stage ring, something I don't do when recording footage. And despite all that, I just can't find anything wrong with Hydro City. I initially had a smaller version of this problem with Angel Island because I saw the problem there. All the problems I had with Angel Island, being the long cutscenes and the horrible mini-boss, aren't present in Hydro City, and all the advantages of Angel Island are present. So if you're expecting me to talk about how much I hate the zones of Sonic 3, well, just wait a bit, because my god, I have a lot to say about the latter half of the Sonic 3 half. That being said, however, let me tell you why this zone is, well, perfect one. Where do I even start? There's so much this zone manages to execute properly. Firstly, the visuals. If there's one thing I do have to say about Hydro City, is that in my opinion, the beta Hydrocity Zone sorta just looks better. That beta background looks amazing. Again, if added into the final game, I would consider it being one of the best backgrounds in all the classic Sonic games. Oh well, I guess you can't have everything. I'm not saying that the backgrounds in the final game is even bad or even decent. It's just that the lighter, more grey palette of the beta version, along with the vegetation, makes me believe that the beta version is better. Next up, we have the music, and oh my god. Unlike Angel Island, which has music I'd only listen to in-game, Hydrocity's music is amazing. Act 1 is worse than Act 2's, and I do mean way worse. But Act 1 isn't bad, it's just that Act 2 is the one in my playlist. Either way, these tracks are very good, and I don't have any real complaints about these tracks. Wow! These two zones' music are very nice and aren't repetitive, boring, and aren't about as empty as my head when I'm trying to learn about history. I sure hope the next zone doesn't do any of that. Next, we have the level design. And frankly, I didn't think I'd like this level design. The level either seems to go too fast or too slow, and the whole thing doesn't seem like it worked. But the way the faster and slower sections are made is excellent. I certainly wouldn't say there's a whole lot of exploration to do in this zone other than the giant rings, but I'm not complaining. I mean, look, you can run in the water! And Act 2's level design is even better because all the sections that would have been phase breakers because of the water are able to be sped through, and this act uses sonic momentum perfectly. And the boss fights are also a huge step up from Angel Island. The mini-boss can be annoying, especially considering how your speed is gimped from being underwater, but the boss fight involves strategy in that you want to use your insta-shield at the right time, and get out of the water to beat him when he starts to whirlpool because then he isn't spinning, so hitting him is easier, but you gotta be careful not to hit him too fast, or else the robot's invincibility frames would have you go into the robot, losing your rings or your shield, and then having whirled anyways. And by the time you can control yourself because of the way you land after the whirlpool phase, he's already in the air. See what I mean? It's quite a simple boss fight, but even then, when I beat it in less than 25 seconds, all this is going through my mind. So the mini boss fight is amazing, and the main boss is essentially everything good about the Spring Yard Zone boss, with none of the bad things. The way you can attack the boss is really thought out, and I get a burst of energy when I get a hit on him. Or, you know, you could just use Super Sonic and have one of the most epic looking boss fights where Sonic just gets stuck in his Typhoon, then proceeds to stand on it, harming Eggman's machine without even trying, and beating him in record time. So yes, subjectively, I guess there is something perfect in this game. In conclusion, I love Hydrocity Zone. It's my favorite zone in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, along with another zone, and it makes Labyrinth Zone cry in the corner with Shank. Sorry Labyrinth Zone, you just can't compare with your younger brother. I don't like this zone. Yeah, not one bit. Believe it or not, despite the title of the review, I actually don't think every single zone in this game is better than sliced bread. And Marble Garden is a prime example. I personally think that this zone is one of the top 3 worst classic Sonic zones. Yeah, that's how bad it is. Took that in with Carnival Dogwater Zone and Scrap My Brain Zone, now we've got ourselves a horrible level to talk about. So for all of you that are waiting for me to start criticizing like crazy, buckle in, because like Angel Island and Hydro City, we're going for 2. Yeah. Like Scrap Brain Zone, despite this level being absolutely horrendous, I still have a good thing to talk about. Yeah, and it's only one thing, that being the background. Now for Act 1, no, that still is a pretty decent background, but it's way too empty. I'm talking about the Act 2 background, with the lush bushes, detailed ancient ruins, and the beautiful mountains in the distance, giving me heavy Marble Zone vibes, which is kind of ironic. Either way, the detail they put into this background is kind of insane. I mean, I honestly don't think I've seen any other background that has so much detail put into one simple structure. Too bad the ground makes you unable to see in the background most of the time, and too bad the ground actually looks disgusting. Yeah, that's it. I do like the background, the settings, and the environment, but really, I know what y'all been waiting for. Let's start yapping. Just like with Hydrocity in terms of good stuff, where do I even start here? I guess we should talk about the boss fights since they piss me off the least. The mini-boss is a degrading of the Mystic Cave boss, in which it causes stuff to fall from the ceiling, then it comes down where you were when the attack stops. The thing is, stuff like this only really works well for the main boss of the zone, where 8 hits is the amount you need to defeat it. But when the boss is literally waiting for you to show up in hitting range while being a mini-boss, it doesn't really make sense. It's really annoying and really pointless, especially since Marble Garden Act 1 lets to absolutely choke you with lightning shields, so the fight goes by even faster. I mean, at that point, you might as well not have a mini-boss in the first place. Also, you know, not innovative, copies of they've already done before or whatever, so yeah, I don't like it. Next up, the main boss. And this boss actually tries something new. Once you reach the boss, it drills the ground, forcing Tails to carry you. So you basically fight the boss in midair, jumping off Tails to score hits on him. Yeah, too bad the whole gimmick of the whole boss fight is optional. Again, they put the boss just there waiting for you to reach it in hitting range. Seriously, no other boss up to this point has done this, so why? And just like that, you can get 7 out of the 8 hits you need to beat the boss before he even takes off. And even so, the gimmick itself is executed horribly. When Eggman comes from the left or right, it's alright, but from up, down, or diagonally, it is straight up annoying. Imagine if debris were flying from the sky, Sonic having to jump from piece to piece, having to time your jumps to hit Robotnik. That'd be so fun, but no. The boss sucks as well. Alrighty, we have the music, and this track is similar to Angel Island in that the Acts track doesn't really differ that much from the other acts. I'm pretty sure Act 2 is literally just Act 1's track started from a different spot with minor changes, kinda like Ice Cap. That being said, Marble Garden's music is by far the most hyped up thing I've ever put on this channel, having been mentioned ever since my very first video that I made that reached any kind of sort of audience, being my Labyrinth Zone video. Sonic CD has the entire US soundtrack, and Sonic 3 has Marble Garden, but it was mentioned in my most popular video, my Sonic 2 review. Heck, it's been mentioned twice in this video already. So, has my opinion changed? Well, after listening to this track while playing the zone, I can say that my opinion has changed by quite a bit. What I once thought was annoying and repetitive has become catchy and nice to listen to. It's done a complete 180 in my eyes. Thank you. I wouldn't have been able to do it without sarcasm. It's honestly, it's not that much. It was a really hard effort. We did it together, and yeah. So that's why we won. No, but seriously, I've said it way too many times, but for the sake of its own review, I'll say it one last time. This music sucks. It's a bad track that doesn't even fit the level that well, and it's super repetitive. And let me mention that repetitive music isn't necessarily a bad thing. Tracks like the Final Zone and Ice Cap are songs that do repeat, but they sound good. Marble Garden doesn't. So the music sucks too. Lastly, we have the level design, and it is by far the worst part of the level. A vertical level is a bad idea by default, but having it be so confined, with terrible gimmicks like the stupid roller thingies, with impressively annoying spike walls that can insta-kill you, the swinging thing from Labyrinth Zone, but even worse, put at the most unpredictable paces that you would have no chance seeing in, even in a prophecy, with actually purposely unseeable enemies, and face statues that have horrible timing, practically forcing you to get hit. Yeah, I think you can see the problem. Marble Garden tries to innovate with new mechanics, but in the end, all of these gimmicks have very inherent problems. In conclusion, I don't like Marble Garden at all. It's the reason why I don't play Sonic 3 sometimes. I don't actually have anything else to say, and I don't really have a segue either, so let the yapping continue in Carnival Night. Unlike my intro with Marble Garden, I'm not gonna start dogging on Carnival Night. It's been a week since my Marble Garden video was made, and believe it or not, some things have actually changed, but don't worry. I didn't miraculously start thinking of Carnival Night as the best zone in Sonic 3 and Knuckles or anything like that, but my opinion has changed somewhat considerably. But fear not, for a yapping shall ensue. Let's get into it. Like Marble Garden, I only have one good thing to say. But the difference is, unlike the case of Marble Garden where the thing I praised it for was something insignificant being the background, in Carnival Night it's actually something pretty important. And it's the level design? Yeah, I'm not joking. At first, the level design seemed really stupid. Everything bounces you around in one way or another. It seems very dumb of a level to just make you uncontrollably go places you had no intention of going. But the more I played the level, the more I realized it's all about the control you have over the character. When you're in the anti-gravity machine's influence and you keep barging trying to get past, chances are you'll keep repeatedly hitting and getting bounced back by the rotating bumpers. Sometimes you even get chain hit by the bumpers, but no matter what, you'll never have a good experience and end up on the short end of the stick. But if you control Sonic and have him move in coordination with the bumpers, then you'll guarantee an inoffensive experience with the bumpers. Now, I'm not saying this level design is great, it's definitely got its problems. For example, you might be able to control yourself with the bumpers, but there's no luck with the pads that always put you on a yellow or red pad, sending you back for no good reason. The barrels aren't a good gimmick at all, and the level just seems to have a thing for crushing you. Spikes you would have never seen coming from the ceiling, the barrels are almost always a crushing hazard, and overall, the level design is still somewhat a trashy mess, but the level design is surprisingly open. It requires a mastery of the character to reach higher paths, and I really like that. So, while the level design isn't in the Angel Island, Hydrocity, or Wing Fortress, heck, I'm even stressing by putting it here, but it's also not something I can call bad without lying. That being said, even if the level design was the best the game had ever seen, I'd still hate this zone. And that's because every other part, and I do mean every other part, of this zone sucks. Let's talk about that too. First off, let's start with the boss fights, because again, they piss me off the least. The mini-boss is really annoying in that it's basically a huge game of stalling. The boss starts off by throwing a flying disc around that bounces around the arena and breaks the blocks he touches. The objective is to get the disc to hit the robot while it's open and to avoid getting shocked by the robot when it's electric. When it's not electric, hitting it makes it open up. So, why exactly do I not like this boss? It mainly comes down to the fact that the disc can hurt you. It really doesn't make sense that the disc that you need to stand on at times to get the boss can damage you. The same thing happens in the Wing Fortress boss, and it's not that I like it there, but you can damage the boss directly in that boss fight, and it's the second to last boss of the game, so I think that pardons it just a bit. What the Carnival Night mini-boss ends up doing is making a weight game boss, which isn't what the classic Sonic boss fights are supposed to be about. They're meant to be about using your skill, dodging obstacles, and actually hitting the boss. Carnival Night's boss has no presence of any of that, and overall makes the level an annoyingly long game of trying to coordinate the disc into the machine 4 times. And that's exactly my problem with the main boss as well. The main boss is essentially a watered down, worse version of the Hydrocity boss, in which it drags you into a specific place to try and hurt you. The problem with the Carnival Night main boss is that the skill factor is completely absent. You can easily get 4 out of the 8 hits while he aimlessly floats around you in hitting range, not even defending himself from your attacks while you get the chance to hit him. Then he drops his ball, which most likely won't hurt you. Then he takes his sweet time to getting where the ball is, and then, finally, he starts an electrical attack, which sucks you in. The thing is, like Hydrocity, this attack is useless if you hold the direction opposite the attack. Then he picks up the ball and starts the attack over. And guess what? The only reason I even know he picks up the ball after the attack is because I had to watch a video on the boss fight, since every time I fight this boss, I'm either Supersonic and I defeat him instantly, or I'm not Supersonic and I defeat him instantly. The boss is way too easy, and even if it isn't that, it's annoying. So next up, we have the music. And it also sucks horribly. But this zone is one of 3 zones that has a prototype music track. So let's hear and see if the fate of Carnival Night's soundtrack was never ever not gonna be a failure. What happened? This track isn't just better, it's on a league of its own. Sure, I wouldn't say it's a perfect match for the zone, but I'm not even paying attention to that when we ended up with this. And again, it's an Angel Island situation where the 2 acts sound nearly identical, so it sucks too. And lastly, we have the worst part of this zone, being the visuals. These levels' visuals are absolutely the worst I've ever seen. Hey, look guys, we found Techno Bass's ancestor. It literally looks like they asked the baby to draw the visuals, and then the baby finished drawing with one of those 96-pack crayons and he threw up on it. Sorry for the analogy, but this level looks really ugly and the background isn't either very simplistic, like the upper part of the background with the triangle background as mountains, or the ugly mismatching of colors used to make the city below. This level sucks. In conclusion, while Carnival Night is not as bad as Marble Garden, it still lacks all the basic features I need from a classic Sonic level in order for me to consider it being good. And with that, let's move on to Ice Cap. Ice Cap Zone is surprisingly good. Like, honestly, considering ice levels aren't really known for being the greatest zones in the Sonic franchise, it's kinda ridiculous that the very first ice level can be considered by some people the best ice level in the series. It's not like any of the more recent ice levels are doing the ice level reputation any favors. So, let's talk about why Ice Cap is such a great level and what things it could work on. Ice Cap Zone is a very memorable level, but it's got some issues. And one of them is the level design. But it's more complex than that. When I say the level design is a bad thing in Ice Cap, for some reason, the difference in between acts in terms of level design is so different that it's kind of mind-blowing. In this case, we're talking about Act 1. I said it in Marble Garden, and I'll say it here. Vertical level design simply does not work for classic Sonic, or modern Sonic for that matter. The level just feels really boring and there's no exploration whatsoever. You kinda just move through the level holding left or right and defeating enemies. Nothing really makes me like this level design, and even Marble Garden had some exploration with the giant rings, but nope. It's not like it's a speedy stage either, it takes on average 2 to 4 minutes to beat the first act. But that's simply because of the staircase elevator things that can easily have you doing entire sections over again without a lightning shield. And that's what makes Act 1 level design so annoying. It's a boring climb to the top, no alternate paths or exploration, and overall it's not good. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is the boss fights. The mini-boss is essentially a worse version of the Metropolis boss, but not really. Unlike the Marble Garden mini-boss, this one has new attacks and new patterns. But it still has the major issue in which it becomes quite easy when you realize it takes less hits than an actual boss. It becomes tedious and kind of annoying to fight this thing, because unlike the Metropolis fight, you can't pop or break the ice cubes, so they're always rotating around the boss. This makes it borderline impossible to hit him without getting hit yourself, and with the boss almost always being out of reach, it becomes annoying. The main boss is better, it has no time where it's simply out of reach with nothing you can do about it, and you have to dodge its ice beams, but when you get hit by them, you freeze up for what seems like forever before getting out and losing your rings. It's especially stupid when you get frozen 2 or more times in a row. And I just don't get it. I get that that's the punishment for you not dodging the attack, but it's a huge pace breaker. Anytime I get here on a normal playthrough, I always use Supersonic because it really isn't worth the hassle to get frozen, wait for you to lose all your rings, and then try to attack the boss again only for it to turn around and hit you again. It's not an unplayable boss, it's just one that gets me really annoyed when I have to play it. That being said, let's talk about why I consider Ice Cap Zone a great level overall. Let's start off with the visuals, and wow, it really gives off the whole icy feel with the giant glaciers and the underground caverns. And despite the huge mountains in the background having as much detail as the Carnival Night mountains, I think it does more good than harm here. Next up, again we have the level design, and Act 2's level design is so different from Act 1, again it's kind of insane, and that also goes for its quality. While I think Act 1's level design is just an empty, boring climber going up and down with no real obstacles, I think Act 2's level design is essentially a reincarnation of Angel Island's level design. Imagine if Angel Island Act 1 was longer, taller, and had more branching pathways. Then put an ice pack on it and bam, that's Ice Cap Act 2's level design. Until recording this footage, I had no idea that there was no need to even see the water in Act 2. There are so many different ways to go through this level with sections that blend in perfectly with each other. This level is also a very speedy one with plenty of loops and slopes to gain huge momentum. And even so, just because the level is fast doesn't mean that there's no exploration. There's plenty! Ring boxes, lives, lightning shields, giant rings, they're all here. It's a very good level design, but sadly, we don't get to see level design this good for a while.
No. Wait.
And lastly, the very best part of the level, that honestly carries the level to perfection for some, it's the music. Like, do I even need to explain myself? Everyone can genuinely agree that Ice Cap's music not only is a certified masterpiece, but it fits the theme of the level exceptionally well. And that's why I'll never play Origins. Sonic 3 Air is a better experience anyway, but let's take a listen to the prototype/Origins music just to see if it has anything on what we got.
and it's okay. I will never say that it's better than what we got with the Sane Mind, but it does fit Ice Cap, and both of the acts don't make me wish I never had hearing ever again, so they're nice. Not comparable to the real Ice Cap music, but nice. In conclusion, while the boss fights in the Act 1 level design is either boring, annoying, or frustrating, the Act 2 level design, the visuals, and the god tier music are really what makes me consider Ice Cap an overall great zone. I really wish I could compliment the game more and not end off the review on a bad note, but launch phase exists, so... Launch base zone. It's a base that launches. I don't like this zone at all. It's been that for most of the time I've known of its existence. There was a period of time that I liked it, but I quickly realized that no matter how you look at it, this level doesn't really have anything good going for it, aside for some minor things. So let's talk about those first. Alright, let's see. What could possibly be good about Launch Base Zone? The music? The atmosphere? Possibly. It's not like I think this area is nice visually, but I can't really say it's bad. Having the Death Egg loom over the background throughout Act 1's background is a nice touch, showing we've made it to the machine, and the absence of it in Act 2 makes me think that Eggman went to go and power it off after he dropped the mini-boss for us. And the way the water bends based on how you enter is cool, I guess. Too bad that the ground looks actually decent? Yeah, I won't deny that this does not match the background in any sort of way, but it's not a bad ground. The mechanical pieces of metal look nice, and running on the metal pipes is kinda cool, I've gotta admit. Next up, we've got the boss fights, and oh my god, there's not one, not two, not three, but 4 bosses for Launch Base. And sadly, there's only one good one. If you're playing a normal playthrough, once you beat the 3rd boss, you finish the act and the cutscene starts playing. But that's if you're playing on Sonic 3 and Knuckles. If you're playing as Sonic or Tails in S3K, you don't get the final fight, but in Sonic 3 you do. And Big Arms might just be one of the coolest boss fights in Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Scratch that, it is the coolest boss fight. The design of the machine, the way the background darkens, the actual mechanics of the boss, and the music of this boss fight is different from any other in the game, and this perfectly matches the tension of this boss. Being midair helps as well, and it's not just the build up to the boss that makes it really good, the boss itself holds its own. Now, I won't lie, it's not perfect. A phase 2 would be beneficial to the fight, especially since its movements and attacks are limited, but I don't hate it for not having it. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is surprisingly the difficulty of the boss. The Sonic series isn't really known for its difficulty. Update 3 before the patch update. Big Arms is kind of difficult. Now, since you're seeing an absolute master at work here, it doesn't look hard, but if those hands catch Sonic, they slam you down and you lose all your rings. Doesn't matter if you're Super Sonic or not in the Genesis version either. Overall, Big Arms is a cool boss fight. And with that, well, let's talk about why this zone is genuinely a bad experience. Alright, now that we're done with the good stuff, let's commence my yapping, and the first thing I want to talk about is all the other boss fights, since they all have their own major problems. This time, we're gonna take this backwards and start with this abomination. This thing swings the spike ball that blatantly defies physics and shoots laser beams while moving up and down. That's it. Not only does this make this boss extremely easy and boring, it's kinda ridiculous that this is the last thing you get to see in Sonic 3 and Knuckles before a huge cutscene plays that shows the Death Egg falling. So this is a pretty big part of the storyline. So I must ask, who on earth thought that this thing was the best thing to put here? It's barely a boss fight at this point, and you know what? It gets worse! Let's look at the second boss, and before I start talking about how bad this boss is, let's watch a playback. Do you see the problem here? If you said everything, then you win nothing because that was extremely obvious. There's next to no skill put into this boss. I can't even talk about it because literally nothing's happening. This isn't the worst boss in the classic Sonic games, but it's the most boring for sure. I don't even know how to critique it or improve it because it's beyond saving at this point. And lastly, we have the mini-boss, and it's incredibly annoying to fight. Remember back in the Ice Cap review where I talked about how bosses that are always out of reach are really annoying? Well, guess what this boss does when you hit it? What in the world were they thinking? Even Supersonic has to deal with this because it doesn't just go up, it does based on how high you jump to hit it the first time. It's not exactly the epitome of bad bosses, but if I'm able to beat any boss without taking damage and without pressing left or right Billabop style, then there's a serious problem. Next up is the music, and well, I don't even know what to say. This is exactly the same as Marble Garden, but with the Sonic CD special of having the music cut out for a few seconds for no reason. The origin music is... it's well...
What the hell?
Wow, this sucks. Better than the original launch base, but not by much. This is supposed to be music for a Sonic Zone, not the music that plays before the arrival of the presidents. And finally, the level design, and it's by far the worst part of the zone. Almost every object in this level, and I do mean almost every object in this level, isn't fair in any way. There's no way to tell when the spike walls are gonna crash into the ground. There's no way to tell when the flamethrowers are gonna shoot fire out. There's no time to react when the frog enemies swing their attack. Spikes casually come in and out of the ground at this time. Unlike Carnival Night, you can't even catch a glimpse of the spikes protruding from the ground. Do you see what I mean? And it's a shame that this is the case, because even though the base level design doesn't have anything on the Angel Island level design or the Hydrocity level design, there's some exploration to be done here, especially in Act 2. You can't win it all, I guess. Launch-based zone is just a straight bad zone. And honestly, Big Arms is all it has going for it. And that's Sonic 3. I originally planned to make a Sonic 3 and Knuckles review, but since it would have taken way longer and since my opinion between Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles do differ, I've decided to cut the game in half. But at least I have a better reason than some McDonald's toys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Despite the fact that this video is longer than my Sonic 2 review, it actually took less time to make than my Sonic 2 review, and that's partially because of the break, but I think it's just because I put my mind towards this video and tried to make it as soon as possible. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. If you watch this far into the video, you're cool. Yeah, you're cool. I don't know what to say. McDonald's.